Bikes are almost at each end of the scale when it comes to mountain bikes.
Yep, I've got my downhill bike right here, which is built for all-out speed, aggressive riding and hitting big jumps and gaps.
Whilst this cross-country bike has to go up, down, cover ground as fast as possible. So let's take a look at them and see what makes them so good for their respective disciplines. So let's start off with the geometry of these bikes. This is a Scott Spark 700. It's got a 67-degree head angle and a 325mm bottom bracket height. So the relatively steep head angle makes it really nice and agile on the slower tracks. Very nimble bike, not so good at high speeds. And the relatively high bottom bracket means you've got the clearance to pedal over all sorts of terrain.
Okay, so on this Scott Gambler, I've got a 63-degree head angle, a lot slacker in the cross-country bike. And the bottom bracket, well, that is 343mm. Yes, you're right, you're thinking that is higher than the cross-country bike. However, when I actually sit in the bike, because I'm running 30% sag, sometimes even more depending on the tracks, actually sinks that bit further into the travel, slackening the bike and lowering the bottom bracket. Now, this bike is not necessarily designed for the slow speed compared to the cross country. It's designed to go really fast, and that's why the geometry is so different. You've got that bottom bracket that is actually lower than the cross country bike. The head angle and then the longer wheelbase makes it so stable at those high speeds.
My cross-country bike is 120 mils travel, front and rear. A lot of cross-country bikes are actually hardtail, so just suspension on the front. It's air sprung, which you'll find on all mid to high level cross-country bikes. And I also have a remote lockout on the handlebars to firm up the suspension to make it more efficient for climbing.
The Gambler suspension is quite different to Neil's cross-country bike. On the rear, I've got 210mm of travel. On the front, I've got 200mm. But what is similar about them both is the fact that my fork and the shock are air. Now, not all downhill bikes have air suspension, but on this one it is. And what that actually allows me to do is put some volume spacers in the shock, which increases the bike's progressivity. And what I mean by that is the further that I go through the travel, the more force is going to be required to actually get through that suspension. Other things about this shock is the fact that I have high and low speed compression adjustment and also rebound adjustment. The fork has also similarly got that compression adjustment just so you can really control the suspension and get it dialed in for those big hard hits.
So to the controls, I've got 740mm wide bars and a 60mm stem on this bike. That's a relatively long stem. It just helps keep that weight on that front wheel, which is essential for climbing. To the seat post, I've actually got a Crank Brothers dropper seat post on this bike. But an awful lot of cross-country bikes, you'll see that old style fixed seat post, more likely to be carbon than anything else. But actually, even at the very highest end, the cross-country World Cup race scene, we are starting to see more people run dropper seat posts.
I've already talked a lot about the suspension, but what I haven't mentioned is the fact that these stanchions are 40mm, and then it's a dual crown fork. So 1, 2, and then attached to that is the stem, which is totally different to the cross-country bike in the sense that it's attached onto the actual fork itself, and it's only 50mm in length. I have actually got the option on this one to change it to 45mm to make it even shorter for those snappier tracks. And then when we talk about the handlebars, well, these are 800mm in width and they've got a 25mm rise. Taking a look at that seat, well, it's fixed. There's no need for a dropper here. There's only one thing aimed at this bike is to do, and that's to go downhill. And then the seat, well, it's at a slight angle so you can get your weight right over the back for those steeper sections of trail.
So to the wheels, cross-country tend to stick to the larger wheels, so 27.5 or 29. This bike is actually 27.5. It's got lightweight wheels, really thin rims, so actually, again, to keep the weight down. Got these really fast rolling lightweight tyres, and the brakes have 180mm discs.
On to the downhill bike then, and the biggest differences have got to be in the tyres. So let's take a look at them. Look at those side knobs, just how aggressive they are, really designed to dig you in and give you as much corner grip as possible. And then the braking edges, well, they're just going to slow you down, and they're so much more aggressive than what the cross-country bike is running. Of course, you can change these for different conditions too. You could get a muddier tyre on with bigger knobs just to dig in even more. The wheel sizes, well, they tend to be 26-inch or 27.5. Not really into the 29-inch zone, but maybe something that we'll see in the future. You've got big wide rims on there to give a massive tyre volume, and then the disc rotor size, well, they're 200 millimeters, a lot bigger than the cross-country bike, and they're a 4-pot brake.
So now to the Drivetrain. This is one of the relatively new school cross-country bikes with this one-by system, one chainring up front, so there's no shifter, and that's a 34 tooth chainring. That's paired to this absolutely massive 1050 1x12 cassette. So that gives me that huge range of gears from down at the bottom in those faster sections, and that 50 tooth helps me grind up even the steepest of hills. Pedals wise, at the highest level, racing cross-country, everyone uses clipless pedals.
So the clue is really in the name. This is a downhill bike. It's not designed to be ridden uphill, and the drivetrains are so different. Comparing it to Neil's dinner plate of a cassette, this thing is tiny. It goes from 11 tooth all the way to 25 tooth. And then the mech, it's a lot shorter as well. It's got a really small cage. So if you're riding through rock gardens, you're not going to be worried about catching on a rock, ripping it off, or even damaging the derailleur. Then I've got a 36 tooth chainring up front. The crank length is a little bit shorter, and then I've got a chain device too, and a bash plate underneath just to prevent any damage happening when you do hit a rock or come up short on a jump onto the chainring. Of course, I've got a set of flat pedals on this bike. You see a lot of the World Cup Pro racers using clip pedals, but for me they're just a little bit funner. And last year there was actually only one rider on flat pedals in the top 10 overall. Leave us a comment down below if you can guess who it is.
So that is cross-country bike versus downhill bike, but there can only be one winner.
I think that means that we should have a vote for the viewers. So if you click right up there, you can pick which one you think is better. Is it going to be the downhill bike, or, well, it's only going to be the downhill bike?
Actually, it doesn't have to be one winner. They're both great bikes. If you click over here, that means you'll subscribe to GMBN.
And if you click right here, you actually get to see this bike being ridden through the rocks with some top tips from Nico Mullally.
And click over here for how to train for cross-country.